Can you cause a collision without your vehicle ever making contact with another vehicle? We're going to answer that question today here on the Driver Trainer channel. Hello everybody and welcome to the Driver Trainer channel. I'm glad you can join me today as I unravel this great collision mystery behind a topic that can be confusing to many people out there on the road. And if you have not already, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. Also, if you have any suggestions for future videos or driving questions that you may have that you would like me to address, be sure to drop your questions or video suggestions down in the comments right below. Now let's get right into it. So I started out the video with the question, can you cause a collision without ever touching another vehicle? The answer is yes. A collision doesn't necessarily require your vehicle to physically strike another vehicle, as there are circumstances where a driver's actions can cause another driver to crash, even though the two vehicles never make contact. And these type of collisions are known as no-contact collisions. So what is a no-contact collision? A no-contact collision occurs when one driver's actions contribute or to cause a crash involving another vehicle, a person, or property without the vehicle that's typically the culprit vehicle physically contacting each other. The very important concept here involving a collision is causation. The question isn't simply, did your vehicle hit the other vehicle? The more important question here is, did your actions create the situation that caused the other driver to crash? Now, I know this is very controversial because most people believe that there must be physical contact between two or more vehicles in order for any of those vehicles to be involved. So in this video, we're going to be breaking much of this down, as a no-contact collision can occur when one driver, let's say that driver cuts off another vehicle, or that driver makes an unsafe lane change, or that driver fails to yield, or that driver pulls into the path of another vehicle, or that driver forces another driver onto the shoulder, or that vehicle suddenly stops without justification, or that driver drifts into another lane, or that driver makes an unsafe turn, or that driver runs a red light or a stop sign, or maybe that driver drives aggressively and causes another driver to take evasive action. These are examples of no-contact collisions. So today we're going to look at 4 examples. First example is going to be the unsafe lane change. Imagine you're driving on a highway or roadway that's 2 or more lanes. Let's say it's 3 lanes going the same direction. Another vehicle suddenly moves into your lane. You have nowhere to go except the lane beside you. You swerve to avoid that vehicle and collide with the third vehicle. Now, the vehicle that caused you to take evasive action never touched your vehicle, but that doesn't automatically mean the first driver is free from responsibility, because that driver's unsafe lane change may have been the event that set the collision in motion. So the key point of this example is that no physical contact does not necessarily mean no responsibility. The second example would be at an intersection. So here's how the example goes. You're approaching an intersection with the right-of-way. Another driver enters the intersection when they shouldn't. You see them coming and you take evasive action. You swerve into another lane and strike a vehicle. The other driver never touches you. Again, the question becomes, what caused the collision? Investigators, insurance companies, and potentially courts may look at the action of all involved drivers and the sequence of events. Let's look at a third example, being forced onto the shoulder. Imagine you're driving down a 2-lane roadway, so basically like a country road. A vehicle coming towards you crosses the center line. You react by moving onto the shoulder to avoid a head-on collision. You don't hit the other vehicle, but you lose control and strike a guardrail. The vehicle that crossed the center line may have created the dangerous situation, even though there was zero contact vehicle to vehicle. Now let's look at the fourth example, the aggressive driver. Consider a driver who aggressively moves towards another vehicle. That driver may tailgate or make an unsafe pass, move aggressively into another driver's lane, refuse to allow vehicle to merge, maybe drive alongside another vehicle and crowd it, and then the other driver becomes frightened and takes evasive action. That driver loses control and crashes. Again, there may be no physical contact, but the aggressive driver's behavior could potentially be considered a contribute cause of the collision. So the question remains here, why can someone be at fault if they never hit anyone? This is where drivers need to understand the difference between contact and causation. A physical impact provides evidence of what happened, and those are a lot easier to prove than a no-contact collision where there's no damage to the offending vehicle whatsoever. But physical contact isn't necessarily the only way one driver's conduct can cause a crash. Think of it like a chain reaction. So for instance, vehicle A causes a dangerous situation. Vehicle B takes evasive action. Vehicle C, basically just a third party that had nothing to do with the initial actions whatsoever in the first place, gets involved in the resulting collision. So vehicle A might never touch vehicle B or C, yet vehicle A's actions may have started the chain of events. So fault isn't determined simply by asking whom hit who, because that's one of the big mistakes drivers make after a crash, by saying they hit me so they're automatically at fault, or I didn't hit them so I'm automatically not at fault. Neither statement is necessarily correct, because determining responsibility can involve examining traffic laws, right-of-way laws, driver action, vehicle positions, witness statements, forward-facing camera footage, surveillance video, physical evidence, skid marks, vehicle damage, statements made by the drivers, and the sequence of events. And the exact rules for determining legal fault can also vary by jurisdiction. So the importance of evidence, no contact collisions can be particularly difficult to prove. Why is that? Because there typically is no physical evidence connecting the two vehicles. That's why evidence becomes extremely important. Now, useful evidence can include forward-facing camera footage, because a forward-facing camera may show exactly what happened. This is why everyone needs a forward-facing camera, and I will preach that as much as possible. Get a forward-facing camera. Also, surveillance cameras. Maybe nearby businesses or traffic cameras, residential cameras, and other systems may capture the incident. And you may need to get that information from those people. Now, in some situations, a lot of businesses have policies against relinquishing such information, and you may need to get a court order to do that. That could be a playing factor as far as getting surveillance footage. Also, vehicle cameras. A lot of modern vehicles are equipped today with factory-mounted cameras that may record surrounding traffic. Very common in Teslas and maybe some high-end luxury cars. Also, driver statements. What each driver says immediately after the crash can become important. And then, of course, physical evidence such as tire marks, debris, vehicle damage, and vehicle positions that can help establish the sequence of events. Now, what should you do if you're involved in a no-contact collision? First of all, you need to stay at the scene. Don't simply leave because your vehicle wasn't involved in physical contact. Second of all, call law enforcement when appropriate. Explain what happened factually, don't exaggerate, don't guess, and of course don't automatically admit fault. And any law firm will tell you that. Third, document everything. Take photographs and videos of your vehicle, the other person's vehicle, the roadway, any lane markings, traffic signs, the intersection. If there are skid marks on the roadway that's applicable to your collision situation, get photos and video of that. Also, any debris that's on the road. And I mean debris from the collision, not just random debris that's just sitting there because somebody threw their McDonald's bag out the window. We're not talking about that. We're talking about debris that came from your vehicle as a result of any collision that you're involved in. Also, surrounding businesses or cameras, if you can get that. Fourth, you need to identify witnesses. Get their contact information if possible. And then number 5, preserve video. If you have video camera footage, save it immediately. Now, as far as forward-facing camera or any video equipped on any vehicle, don't assume that the camera will keep recording indefinitely, as forward-facing cameras especially operate on what's called a loop. That video camera only records based on the size of the SD card inside the camera. So if you have a 128 gigabyte SD card, when you first installed it, it recorded until it was full. Once it's full, it starts erasing the oldest information and writes over it. And then it loops. So basically, if that card only supports, say, 5 hours of video, after 5 hours of recording, anything that's 4 hours and 50 some odd minutes old is going to be erased. So you need to go through your camera immediately and find the footage and save it immediately. If you are not able to access the footage immediately, you may need to pull the SD card out of the camera, and hopefully you have a backup SD card so you can keep recording if your vehicle is safe to drive away after the collision. Now, so far, the talking points I have been addressing refers to people who are involved in no-contact collisions that may or may not be at fault of the collision. Now I'm going to talk about the best way to avoid being involved in a no-contact collision, meaning you're the person who may end up being the victim of a no-contact collision. So we'll turn this around, because you don't want to be the driver who creates the situation that causes someone else to crash, but you also don't want to be the victim involved in such type of crash. And the best defense for both parties is anticipation and space. I want to go over 8 areas that can help prevent you from becoming a victim of a no-contact collision. Number 1, don't ever make sudden lane changes if you don't have to. Because not only does a sudden lane change put you at risk of hitting something you weren't expecting, but it can also put you at risk of a rollover crash. So before lane changing, you want to make sure you're checking your mirrors, make sure you check your blind spots, signal your intentions, and make sure there is sufficient space before you make that lane change. And this applies to people on both sides of the coin here. And don't assume that because your turn signal is on, you automatically have the right to move into the lane. Because the signal communicates your intention, but it doesn't just give you permission to occupy an unsafe space. Number 2, don't force your way into traffic. If another vehicle doesn't leave you enough room to merge, don't force the issue. Slow down or adjust your position when necessary, and being one vehicle ahead isn't worth creating a collision. Number 3, maintain a space gap, because space gives you options. If you're following too closely, you have fewer options when traffic changes suddenly. So you want to maintain enough following distance to give yourself time to brake, lane change, move away from danger, and to avoid sudden evasive maneuvers. This is one of the most important principles of defensive driving. Number 4, look beyond the vehicle immediately in front of you. You don't want to be staring at the bumper ahead of you or the vehicle ahead of you. You want to be looking further down the road. You should be looking 10 to 15 seconds down the roadway so you can anticipate danger and also make sure you have options in case something were to change. So you want to be looking for brake lights, traffic slowing down, not just the vehicle in front of you, but the vehicles ahead of that vehicle in front of you. You want to be looking for vehicles entering the roadway, as well as bicyclists and pedestrians. You want to be looking for lane changes up ahead, emergency vehicles that might be stopped or coming in your rearview mirror. You want to be on alert of that as well as road hazards, including road construction, as well as drivers behaving unpredictably. Because the earlier you recognize a problem, the more options you have. Number 5, we need to expect other drivers to make mistakes. That is an absolute given because you cannot control another driver's behavior, but you can control how you respond. If you see a driver drifting between lanes or accelerating aggressively or following too closely, weaving through traffic, looking distracted, or failure to maintain their lane, you want to give them space and stay away from that person if all possible. Don't compete with them, don't retaliate, and don't try to teach them a lesson because that'll cause more problems and that'll put you just as much at fault as that guy if you have a collision with that person, contact or no contact. Just simply let them go. Number 6, don't turn someone else's mistakes into your collision. This is an important defensive driving concept, because suppose someone cuts you off. Your first instinct might be, I'm not letting that guy get away with that. But accelerating towards them, changing lanes aggressively, or attempting to confront the driver can turn a dangerous situation into a collision. And even if it doesn't result in a collision, it can result in other things that you don't want to be involved in. Instead, just back off, create space, let the other driver leave your immediate area, because your goal isn't to prove you're right, your goal is to avoid the crash. Number 7, use your escape route. When driving, don't just ask, where am I going? Ask yourself, if something goes wrong right now, where can I go? Always keep an escape route available whenever possible. That might mean an open lane, a shoulder when legally and safely usable, additional following distance, space between your vehicle, so avoid surrounding yourself with other vehicles whenever you can. And then number 8, avoid creating surprise. Because sudden actions are one of the biggest contributors to dangerous situations. You want to avoid sudden lane changes, sudden braking when not necessary, abrupt turns, stopping in unexpected locations, cutting across multiple lanes, and entering traffic without sufficient space. You want to be predictable because predictability gives other times to react. So the big takeaway is you don't have to touch another vehicle to contribute to a collision. Your driving decisions can create a situation where another driver has to make an emergency maneuver. And that maneuver can result in a crash. So defensive driving isn't simply about avoiding hitting another vehicle. It's also about avoiding situations where someone else has to take evasive action. So in closing, the safest driver isn't necessarily the driver who can react the fastest. It's the driver who recognizes the problems early enough that a drastic reaction isn't necessary. So give yourself space, look ahead, expect mistakes, keep an escape route, and most importantly, don't allow another driver's bad decisions to turn into a collision. That is your collision. Remember, you don't have to make contact to cause a collision, and you don't have to be involved in one just because another driver makes a mistake. So if you found this video helpful, be sure to like and share the video with as many people as possible. And the 8 points I presented are actually a part of a defensive driving fundamental that I cover in a 5-part video series, and it can be found in the channel's playlist, which I'll post here at the end of the video. So be sure to subscribe to the Driver Trainer channel, and don't forget to place your comments or video suggestions in the comments below, as well as your questions. Thank you for joining me for today's topic, and I hope this video was informative as we answer the big question regarding no contact collisions. Be safe out there, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.